I'm Albert from Summer Associate Hub, and this is Practice in Point One, where we speak with big law attorneys all about their practice in under 6 minutes or point one billable hours. All right, so let's start off. Tell us your name, your title, your practice, and where you work.
Hi, Albert. Nice to be here. My name is
Yeah.
Kenneth Wang. I'm one of the tax partners at Allen Matkins, and I work out of our New York office.
All right, great. So take us through a typical tax matter that you'd work on kind of from beginning to end.
Sure. I mean, that's actually one of the things I really like about what I do, because I would say there isn't necessarily a typical matter. Pretty much any transaction or matter that involves some exchange of services or money or property needs tax advice, right? So there's a wide variety of things. For example, two parties might want to come together and, start a business, and they might do this as a joint venture, which is typically structured as a partnership for tax purposes, where any income or deductions flow up from the partnership to the partners, and the way that that is allocated matters between the two of them, right? Or people might make corporate entities in order to run a startup business, in which case there are various tax incentives for the owners of that business. So at each stage, a tax person needs to get involved to, make sure that it's structured properly and that people get the tax efficiencies that they want.
So you wake up in the morning, you go to work. What does your typical day look like at work?
Sure. I mean, one of the things I've always liked to do, and it's been a great habit, is I like to start the day, having my coffee and just catching up on what are the latest developments that have come out in the last couple of days on the tax front. Certainly, there's been a lot of it in the news with, some of the legislative changes that are anticipated by the current administration. But even on a normal day, there's a lot of new stuff that happens, rulings, court decisions, that sort of thing. And then beyond that, I just get into sort of the day. And one of the nice things, again, is because of the variety of what I do, each day is kind of a little bit different, right? There might be a day where it's very call heavy, where I have to get on the phone and explain, particular strategies or positions or tax structuring alternatives to clients. There might be days where largely I'm in an agreement, whether it's, say, the joint venture agreement or a purchase agreement, and reviewing it, marking it up, making sure the parties are protected and getting the tax efficiencies that they're looking for. So, even some days from time to time when there's something really complex, I still do tax research, instead of having my associates help out, and really sort of learn an area of law that maybe I was, sort of less familiar with, previously.
So you're a partner at the firm. It's always helpful for law students to know, what do the associates on your team do?
Sure, they do a variety of things depending on their experience. Usually associates in the tax practice, when they start out, they'll be doing a lot of research, because the body of law that we work with
Yeah.
is so broad and complicated, right? It's impossible for any given person to know it, partners or otherwise. So as they're getting up to speed on various issues and learning the law, they're building their experience as well. And then beyond that, similar to kind of what I do, but perhaps at a sort of a first stage cut, right? They'll review documents, maybe, mark them up, make changes in order to sort of negotiate tax provisions. They may have phone calls with opposing counsel or prepare summaries for clients. And then, as the experience builds, they get sort of closer and closer to sort of what partners do on a day-to-day.
My favorite question: what is the coolest or most interesting tax issue or legal matter that you've worked on?
Sure. I mean, there's so many of them over the years, but I guess more recently, we had a client where they had an investment fund, which is typically structured as a sort of partnership, often using non-US entities like in the Cayman Islands or, British Virgin Islands or somewhere else. And investors may be from all over, from the United States. Maybe they're US tax exempt investors like foundations or, pension funds, and non-US investors. They all have different needs. Now, private sort of, debt financing can be a US trade or business, which has some onerous tax rules, both for tax exempt investors as well as foreigners. And our client was trying to get in this space. And we ended up restructuring the fund, kind of splitting up what they were doing from one fund into two entities, and interposing various holding companies in order to make sure that, both the direct lending business could be done efficiently without impacting what they otherwise had that was not part of that investment strategy. And this was all tax driven. So it's been months of work in order to get this done. And really, it was just sort of tax driving the bus in a way that perhaps sometimes is not in your more typical, deal transactions.
So it's always helpful for law students to know why attorneys chose their practice area. So why did you choose to go into tax?
Honestly, that saying, it's better to be lucky than good. I kind of feel that way, because I was not expecting to be a tax lawyer in law school or even starting my 2L summer internship. I was expecting to go into corporate, maybe do M&A or finance or something. But I ended up taking a tax assignment about halfway through because one was available and it sounded interesting. I really liked it. Got to know the partners and the associates in the tax group where I was interning, took a few more, and it's really just the puzzle aspect of it, right? People who enjoy, say, board games and reading rules and finding the most optimal solution within a certain framework, that's kind of what we do day to day. And that's just always been interesting to me. And it makes every day fun.
All right, fantastic. Last question. For a law student interested in going into tax, what is your best advice?
I would say at least take some tax classes as well as take transactional business classes, right? Because ultimately tax comes down to dollars and cents. And so not only understanding the rules within tax and what the Internal Revenue Code and all the authorities might say, it's very helpful and honestly critical to know what the underlying business dynamics are. What are people trying to achieve? Because if you don't, because ultimately tax is a support practice. We're here to help clients get to a certain economic result in the most tax efficient and sort of, capable way that they can. So understanding what, corporation sort of, structures might be, or what investment funds might be looking at, or what venture capital might be interested in, all of these things will help inform your practice.
Thank you for these wonderful insights, Kenneth Wang. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much.